Hey everyone, Minutia Minute here. Thank you guys for joining me to find out what happened this week in Batman. Before we get started, I just have a couple channel announcements that I want to go over with you guys. This is actually going to be the last This Week in Batman for the year. Um, I will still have Batman content coming for you on Tuesdays, but just because of the holidays and everything going on, the week of Christmas and the week of New Year's is just going to be really busy for me. I don't think I'm going to have time for proper reviews. I will be back with a regular This Week in Batman episode starting the first week of January. I won't be doing full reviews for the books that come out over the next 2 weeks, but I will at least show off what I picked up and share any kind of immediate thoughts that I have while I'm doing that. Before getting into the proper January reviews. Looking at the rest of the Batman books coming out over the next couple weeks, honestly, I don't think we're going to be missing a whole lot. Detective Comics is filling in an issue between Fear State and the weekly upcoming Shadows of the Bat with a Fear State Aftermath issue. There's an issue of Nightwing and Catwoman coming up that I'm pretty excited to read. But all in all, hopefully nothing too crazy that's going to get missed. And if there is something super important that you guys need to know about, I'll at least do some kind of an announcement to let you know, hey, go pick up this book, you're going to need it. But I'm guessing we're kind of in the clear here until January. So as for the upcoming Batman content over the next couple of weeks, be sure to join me next week. I will be talking about some of the non-continuity Batman books that I've been picking up. We've got a lot of series wrapping up, so I can talk about those. So hopefully that'll be fun for you, kind of a different change of pace from what I've been doing with This Week in Batman. And then for the final Tuesday of the year, I'm going to be talking about just the year in review, what my favorite issues of Batman were, talk about some of my favorite covers, some of my favorite short stories, all that kind of stuff. So be sure to tune into that. Now that I'm almost caught up with Future State, I'm actually in a position where I've read almost every Batman book that came out this year. Like, not quite, but pretty close. So it'll be fun to kind of do an overview of what some of the real standout issues were, I think. And I hope you guys join me for that. Otherwise, I will have regular content coming up. I'm usually able to do my movie rewind videos in advance, so hopefully I'll have content for you for the rest of the year on that every Friday. This week is actually going to be a two-parter, so it's going to post on Thursday and Friday, in which I talk about Star Wars on home video, so join me for that. I had a lot of fun talking about it and doing that video. I hope you guys have fun watching it. We'll see. And then if I have any other pickups or hauls or whatever, I'll pop on and talk about those too. So I hope you guys are able to make some great holiday memories and pop in when you can and watch what you want. In-continuity stuff and a lot of out-of-continuity stuff. So this week I picked up a total of 8 different Batman books. The one book I didn't pick up this week was Robin and Batman, which I didn't pick up last month either. As much as I love Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen, I just had a lot of Batman books I was picking up last month, and I just didn't really see what the point of that Robin and Batman story was going to be. This month I thought about circling back, picking up issues 1 and 2, but the cover story for Batman Urban Legends this month is Batman and Robin focused, so I kind of decided, meh. The other book that I skipped this week was the 80-page Christmas special that DC's putting out, which has Harley Quinn on the cover, heavily features Batman and company in it. But overall, it's a DC Universe book, not just a Batman book. And also featured on the cover of Batman Urban Legends is some Christmas-themed storytelling, so I feel like I had that book kind of covered too, so I didn't pick that up either. Starting off with the non-continuity stuff, I picked up Batman, The Adventures Continue. This is issue number 7. The season 1 of this ran for 8 issues, so I don't know if this is the penultimate issue or if this is going to run for longer this time around. We are on the conclusion of the Mayoral Madness story arc, which, to be honest, hasn't really been my cup of tea. This book hasn't been firing on all cylinders the way it had for the first 4 issues to me, so I'm kind of excited to wrap that up and see where it kind of goes next. I am liking this series, just not in love with this particular arc. Also, I got Future State Gotham number 8. I am almost caught up with Future State, you guys. I've been through all of the miniseries except for Nightwing, and I have actually started reading this Future State Gotham series. I read the first issue last night. So I'm interested to see where this goes, and I will have some more thoughts about Future State for you in a future video for sure. I picked up Harley Quinn, the animated series, issue number 4. If you like the animated series, this has done a great job capturing the spirit of that, and I definitely recommend picking it up. And then finally, I got Batman the Imposter, issue 3 of 3. I read the first issue of this. I slept on the second issue because I wanted to just read the whole thing together, so can't wait to see where this one goes. As for the books in continuity, I got Batgirls issue number 1, a book that I'm, to be honest, kind of dreading reading based on the supporting story that it had in Batman. We'll see. I'm going to give it a chance. I Am Batman number 4, another book that I've been lukewarm on, but I'm curious to see where it goes, especially now that I am caught up on Future State and have seen where the Jace Fox character kind of goes. The Joker number 10, a book I'm looking forward to very much, and love this cover, by the way. And then finally, Batman Urban Legends. This is also number 10. Like I said before, we've got a Christmas theme, we've got Batman and Robin, so this book covers a lot of different bases this month, and actually saved me some money considering that this is $7.99, and without it, I probably would have been convinced to pick up Robin and Batman and that 80-page giant, which would have been another like $20 worth of DC books. So as expensive as this book is, actually kind of a money saver this month. Don't hear me saying that very often. So those are the books that I got. Let's dig in and see what happened this week in Batman. Okay, so the first book I read this week was Batgirls, a title that I wasn't too excited for. My biggest problem with it was really the art. I just find it to be very rough and not in a way that I enjoy. It kind of reminds me of some of the things I've seen in like more like the young adult DC Inc. graphic novels that I've seen, and actually the whole tone of this book kind of falls in line with that. It's very childish. It's got a lot of silly one-liners that aren't really that funny. They just kind of are there. As you can see, there's a lot of dialogue in this, but there's not really a lot of story. It's really just a lot of like witty banter. So the effect for me overall, like, it just felt like a book that really wasn't necessarily intended for me. Maybe this will work better with a younger readership. I don't know if DC's trying to like find a way to bridge their Scholastic sales with like regular comic book sales, or like what the strategy is here. Because the only thing that really differentiates this to me from a DC Inc. book to just a regular Batman book is the fact that this is taking place in continuity. In order for me to really get more out of this book, you would preferably have to change the artist, although, you know, this art might be for some people. It's, you know, like I said, just not for me. I did find it a little bit more tolerable once I was kind of in it, because it was, you know, consistent throughout the whole book as opposed to just a backup story in which the primary story was much better from an artwork perspective. But then the other thing is like finding a better dynamic for these characters, because I think there's definitely something to be said for Spoiler and Cassandra Cain, and like those two as a pair I think could actually be really interesting, because, you know, Spoiler is a little bit of a ditz, kind of a goof, and Cassandra Cain has historically been like all business, well-trained master assassin, could literally take Batman in a fight if she had to. So like there could be kind of a fun buddy cop dynamic to that, but they don't really go for it. All the characters, for the most part, kind of read the same to me, and I think that's where this book is really letting me down. Just to illustrate an example of it, they have a neighbor who's like bringing out this giant duffel bag and throwing it in the garbage, and Spoiler makes the connection that there's a serial killer throwing bodies in the dumpster, and that duffel bag happens to be body size. You know, these guys are supposed to be detectives, and they're just, you know, again, they're just kind of acting like teenage girls, and Cassandra Cain is just like lockstep with them, and that just doesn't work for me. Like, it just creates a situation where everything in the book is very one note. So, again, this book isn't really intended for me, and I understand that. But that said, I think there's a fair criticism to be made here about the direction DC's kind of trying to take these characters. I think having a Batgirls story in which you have all the Batgirls together is cool. I think that the idea of having a Robin story in which all of the Robins are together is also potentially very cool. I genuinely like having all these different iterations of the characters living together in the same universe. It adds relevancy to the comic books that I grew up with. So, all that stuff is well and good, but they need to figure out editorially how to give all of these characters a unique direction to go, because I just don't feel like they've really nailed that yet. Now, the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting at the end of this, for those of you guys who want it just spoiled, if you don't want it spoiled, skip ahead a few seconds, but at the end, they run into a new foe, which is basically this giant mech suit. I'm not sure if that's a person or a robot or what, but there's a few different people, all of whom are somehow associated with Simon Saint, who obviously just recently went to jail, and the Batgirls are going to be fighting that in the next issue. So that's kind of interesting. If you're curious where Simon Saint is going, we're going to find out a little bit more about that in the Batgirl storyline. So at least the book has a direction. I just need to see a little bit more from what they're doing with these characters in order for me to overlook the art and continue reading this one. Okay, so my second read of the day was I Am Batman number 4. This was a really interesting read, actually, this week, especially coming right after Batgirls, because these two books feel very much in the same universe. Batgirls deals with the aftermath of Fear State, Simon Saint, and what is next for the Magistrate, which has seemingly been defeated. And that is all very much in the clear and present in I Am Batman number 4. They're continuing to pull the strings of what is going on with the Seer, which is funny because in Batgirls, the Seer is revealed to be like this teenager who's almost like a demented Miracle Molly sort of a type, whereas in here and in other Batman books, we've only seen the Seer as she's representing herself by taking over these like inanimate objects. And so it makes her a lot more scary than she actually is when you actually know what she's up to, which is kind of funny. It's kind of a clever sleight of hand in terms of making the Seer the same character, but different depending on kind of what your age range is when you're reading these books. But as for this read itself, I would say I probably got a little bit more enjoyment out of it this month than I have in prior months. The art to me is still pretty meh, just not doing much for me. I wish they would invest more in the art because I think this could be a really cool Batman if they invested in it. I have been catching up on Future State, and I read the next Batman books, and I was surprised how interesting Jace was in those books, actually. When I finish going through all the Future State, I'll probably give some more detailed thoughts on that. But I think the reason why he works better in Future State than he does in this is there's just not really a great place for him in the current DC universe. Part of what makes his character interesting is the idea that he's filling a void in Gotham City that has been vacated. Batman, Bruce Wayne still exists, but not in the form that we've known him, and so he's a very relevant character in that situation. Whereas in this, it's just like the next Batman Begins, and it just doesn't really, it just feels extra and unnecessary. So as I said, this book is dealing with Simon Saint and the fallout from Fear State. So I'm going to spoil some stuff here, but Simon Saint gets out of prison and ultimately ends up getting executed in order to lure the new Batman into a trap. The whole purpose of which is to sell Lucius Fox on basically, I don't know if it's supposed to be the Magistrate 2.0 or what exactly, but there's an element of like Terminator to this story in the sense that's like, we stopped Future State from happening at the end of Fear State, or at least that was kind of the implication of the story. But now in Batgirls and now I Am Batman, there's sort of this implication that you can't stop it. It's still coming. It's just going to come in a slightly different form than what you expected. So it'll be interesting to see how this and this continue to intertwine, because it seems like the regular Batman titles, at least as far as the main Batman story goes, is kind of moving on. Detective Comics is moving on. I'm hoping that Nightwing is going to move on. and Catwoman will move on. But meanwhile, some of these, future state unique characters or old characters made new again with Batgirls are going to continue to pull that thread. So it'll just be interesting to see where it goes. Right now, neither of these I would consider worth a pickup, but I'll keep you posted, and I'm interested to see what happens. All right, next read of the day was Batman Urban Legends number 10, which has, as you can see from the cover, a little bit of a Christmas theme to it. 4 Frozen Tales featuring Tim Drake, Nightwing, Azrael, Tweedledee, and Tweedledum. That's actually not quite true. There's really 2 Christmas stories in here, and then there's the wrap up to the 2 other ongoing stories that have been in the last couple of issues, which conclude on a sentimental note, but aren't necessarily like Christmas stories per se. So in the past, I've been pretty hard on Urban Legends. It's been up and down for me, but as I've gotten further in, I'm glad I've stuck with it because this has actually become a real pleasure to read. Even though I don't love every single story that's in any given Urban Legends book, and this book is no exception, they've done a pretty good job curating a good variety of stories with a good variety of characters, sometimes touching on in-continuity stuff, sometimes kind of beating to their own drum. And overall, it's been a great package. Like, you never know quite what you're going to get, and that's something that I have come to really look forward to. So what have we got in Urban Legends this month? We've got 2 Christmas stories, A Carol of Bats at the beginning, and then The Bats of Christmas Past at the end. I'm going to start with the stories in the middle. Azrael in Dark Night of the Soul, which is the final part in a 3-part story by Dan Waters. And then Tweedledee and Tweedledum in Down the Rabbit Hole, part 2 of 2 by Sam Johns. I'll kick things off with Azrael just to kind of get it out of the way, because that was the book I was kind of the least interested in, to be honest. This was a title that just hasn't done a lot for me. I'm just not a huge Azrael fan. I need to spend more time with Azrael because I'm just not quite clear on the direction of this character as he exists now and how it compares with Azrael of the past. Because really, outside of Night Quest, I just really haven't done much with Azrael in terms of collecting or exploring or reading. I think if you've been enjoying Ghostmaker and the art and action in that, this is a title that might do it for you because it has that sort of quasi-anime style to it. But that doesn't appeal to me, and so this kind of doesn't really either. Getting into the Tweedledee and Tweedledum story, though, I sang this story's praises last month, and once again, like, it's delivering on great art, and the Tweedledee, Tweedledum story arc that we've got in this is really very interesting. Like, I really got a lot of enjoyment out of this. In the first episode of this, you have Tweedledum trying to navigate the healthcare system and just in despair over his inability to navigate the system and get the care for Tweedledee that he needs. In this, he tries to use money to solve the problem, and that doesn't work. He resorts to violence and ultimately has a confrontation with Batman in which he has to make a couple of choices, neither of which are very good, but ultimately are the result of the choices he's made in life up to that point. You also find out a little bit about why Tweedledee is sick, which is interesting, kind of has some poignancy to it, and makes for a fantastic conclusion to this story. I really, really got a lot out of this. But again, as I said last month, like, this is exactly the kind of story that I think something like Batman Urban Legends can really shine with, because it allows you to experiment a little bit, deal with a couple of obscure characters, and provide something unique to someone who's reading almost every Batman title that's out there. Now, as for the Christmas stories, I'm going to start with the Nightwing one first, just because I found this one to be a little bit trite. It was fun, it just didn't really have that much going on with it. It's kind of a Christmas Carol story in which Nightwing faces off with some scarecrow goons that have fear toxin. He gets infected and is visited by the 3 Batgirls, actually, which was kind of a fun twist to the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. But ultimately, the story didn't really have that much to offer. It's just kind of talking about how Nightwing is a workaholic and he's not taking the break that he needs to spend time with the Bat family on Christmas Eve. It just doesn't ring super true to the character, just because Nightwing has always kind of been the glue that holds the Bat family together. So while it's kind of interesting seeing them kind of holding him accountable to his own standards, I don't know, it just didn't do a ton for me. I think that the story that shined more was the first Christmas story, which follows Tim Drake in A Carol of Bats. I thought that the artwork on this, while it wasn't my favorite, was kind of unique. At times, it kind of gave me like Dustin Wynn vibes, although like not so much now, but like earlier Dustin Wynn books from years ago. And the story in this I thought was pretty compelling because ultimately like Tim Drake is trying to take Batman back from the brink, as Robins often have to do. And while he's doing that, he gets feedback from Nightwing that to a certain degree like you're fighting a losing battle and you have to find the right balance for yourself because you'll kind of drive yourself nuts. But where the story really kind of kicked into gear was when Batman and Robin have to contend with a bunch of homeless people who are ultimately really counting on Peacekeeper to sort of save them. And now with Peacekeeper being defeated, they feel like they have no one that speaks for them. And it was interesting to see Batman navigate that. You see him do something that he's never done in a Batman book before, which he provides comfort to these people, which was interesting. And there's a great moment in here where he's able to raise some money because he's not rich anymore, but be able to provide a good meal for these people, which was very heartwarming. And then he kind of calls out like, you know, I may not be rich anymore, but I'm still Bruce Wayne, which kind of has a double meaning to me in the sense that he is able to get, you know, the money together to give these people a square meal on Christmas Eve. But he's also Bruce Wayne in the sense that Bruce Wayne is empathetic, he's altruistic, and, you know, the fact that he can kind of embrace this stranger and help them get through a difficult time is interesting, because that is representative of Bruce Wayne. There's always a challenge with Batman where it's like, you know, you can do more good as a rich billionaire by supporting altruistic causes than you can as a crime fighter knocking heads. And the truth is, you know, Bruce Wayne Batman is both. And so this book did a good job kind of representing that, and I thought that was cool to see, especially in a world where Bruce Wayne isn't a billionaire. He can still do good in the community, not just as a caped crime fighter. Okay, last review of the day is Joker number 10. All right, I'm just going to say right off the bat, love the cover. I know a lot of people in the community talk a lot about like homage covers. I think sometimes we're a little too generous with our definition of what an homage is. But I will say this cover does strongly remind me of Batman 619, the second print, in which the Riddler is playing chess with various Batman heroes and villains at the end of the Hush storyline. So Joker number 10 definitely gets cover of the week. I saw Circumstances shouted out when he was looking at covers, and I got really excited because I hadn't seen it yet. Unfortunately, popping this book open, I was pretty disappointed, to be honest. So I think it's partially just a matter of timing. We get another Francavilla book that's set in the past following Jim Gordon kind of struggling to balance his obsession with Joker and taking care of his family. We've got Barbara Gordon in a wheelchair here and him learning to live with that. We've got James Jr. and him becoming obsessed with the Joker, and it's sort of revealed that he's a serial killer in this. I'm not sure if this is the first time that Jim Gordon really realizes that his son is a killer. I know I was kind of knocking the art in the Joker annual. I just was annoyed that, you know, the Joker annual felt like a repeat of like Joker number 5-ish whenever Francavilla was on that book then. Very similar story. This, I think the story was a little bit more fleshed out, but coming off of the heels of that Joker annual, it still felt like a repeat. Like, I was really excited to get down to business, and this interior art, interior story just are in no way reflective of what's going on that Joker cover. Like, the cover is telling you this is the next chapter in the Joker saga, which has been heating up all throughout this whole series to this point, and the interior is just a side story. I think at some point I would like to sit down, read that other issue of Joker that Francavilla is on, the annual, this, and then like Killing Joke and the Black Mirror storyline, just kind of put those books sequentially and just kind of see how these all read together. I think that would be really interesting. But in terms of the next issue of the Joker, this unfortunately was a disappointment to me. Not because it was bad, it was actually very well done. It just wasn't what I was excited for when I picked the book up. Now, as far as the Punchline story, unfortunately, this one was kind of a bust for me too. We're kind of at this in between point. Like, things were really ratcheting up as we were in prison, and now we're just kind of gearing up for the trial. And I think, in the coming issues, there's going to be a lot of great stuff unfolding. And, Cullen and Harper Row and Punchline and how all these characters are sort of getting set up here is going to lead to some pretty explosive stuff when we get into 11, 12, 13. But in and of itself, it was just kind of moving the chess pieces around a little bit, and then the story kind of ended. Actually, that's the end of it right there. So yeah, I mean, all in all, unfortunately, I gotta say, Joker number 10, unfortunately a bust. And, this was the book I was kind of most excited to read, which is why I saved it for last. But, not every book is going to be the best. Realistically, you could probably skip this, go straight to issue 11, and I'm guessing you're not really going to miss anything. It'll depend. We'll see if this ties back in later. I wish that these flashback stories, first of all, were connected with each other a little bit more, and then they dovetailed into what was going on in the current Joker book. I think I'd be more satisfied with it if that was the case. But as it is, they're kind of thematically related, but they're not really giving us anything new, and they're not really directly related. So it just feels too much like filler for me, even with the Francavilla. So as far as in-continuity reading this week, it's kind of a mixed bag, but I actually had a lot of fun reading this week overall, even though, Batgirls wasn't my favorite, Joker was a disappointment. If you look here, this is going to be my order in terms of least favorite to most favorite, Batgirls being at the bottom, Urban Legends easily being at the top this week. I Am Batman, surprisingly second, although it was a distant second compared to Urban Legends, and then Joker kind of sandwiched in between there. So pick up Urban Legends. If you want kind of some Christmas stories, it's worth the pick up there. If you pick up issue 9, you're going to get the complete Tweedledee Tweedledum story, and you're going to get 2/3 of the Azrael story. Honestly, I think you could pick up what's going on in that story without going back and picking up issue 8. So if you've been sleeping on Urban Legends, this might be kind of a fun issue to hop on with. But that concludes my thoughts on this week's Batman continuity. I hope you guys have a great week.